What if I told you that we could remove lobbyists from our government? We could end career politicians taking over key positions in our government, from federal government all the way down to local. If we end these tyrannical think tanks and these tyrannical groups of people with crazy ideas to tell the American people what it is they need to do, how much money they need to pay in taxes, all these things that we are just kind of demanded to do. And in many times then we wait for our government to give back, to make things a little easier for the American people. What if we just had a government full of veterans? What if veterans ran our country? Now, some people will say that, no, maybe this is a novel idea. Some people say it's a horrible idea. I think it's an interesting idea, and I think that it's not really a fantasy. I think it's something that we could make a reality in this country. Now, I also seem to think that maybe a government that's completely made up of veterans may not be the greatest idea. I think having differences of opinion and different life experience brings clarity and it brings new ideas. But I think that if we had just an overabundance of veterans, people in this country who know sacrifice, they know what the cost of freedom is, and not even necessarily just veterans who have served in active combat, but just men and women who bring a plethora of life experience to the table. In a place now in our country where we are so divided, we're very polarized, I think that everyone would agree, maybe having more people who understand sacrifice, who know what good leadership is and what it looks like, and also people who are familiar with the idea of mission first. Not necessarily, when I say mission first, not necessarily padding our pockets for our next election, not necessarily building these big campaign think tanks, I guess you could say, and also people that aren't so narrow-minded that they can't see past the bigger picture. What is the bigger picture? It seems to me, and it seems to us here at 3 Clicks Media and at Vettertainment, that our country has kind of gotten into this place where we quit working as a team. We quit looking out for each other. It seems. I think that there's a lot of people in our communities that are still all about the team game, the long game for America. But just imagine a new standard of leadership. A new standard of leadership in this country that talks about and displays mission first. Not only just mission first, but the idea of merit-based promotions. If you F up, gotta answer for it. You don't get protection just because you're an elected official. Well, I have divided this idea, this talk today up into different sections, and I thought that we would just kind of go through them. I have some notes here on my screen. And the first thing I want to talk about is veteran mindset. What does military service teach us about leadership and accountability? Veterans lead with discipline, loyalty, and a team-first mentality. You see, a lot of folks who serve in the military, who probably were more on the enlisted side than officer side, would tell you that there's this idea that we're all equally as worthless. And as bad as that sounds, it makes a lot of sense. The idea is that nobody is above another. It's probably the reason why in the military we all wear the same clothes. We all have the same standard, grooming standards, depending on male or female. Everyone looks the same. Everyone wears a uniform for a reason. The idea is that we are not individuals, we are a team. I think that military culture is also something that would help break this gridlock on partisanship that we have in government. I think it's very common that we see politicians, of course, on their side of the aisle, without the ability to look across, without the ability to work as a team with people who may think differently than you. In fact, I can remember many times during my service where I would be serving on the same team, in the same platoon, in the same unit as people I really didn't agree with. And I think it happens all the time. We can't agree with everybody. Of course, everybody's life experience before the military is going to shape their opinions and the way that they walk through life. But the one common goal of just about everybody that serves in the military is to accomplish a mission and do it as a team. Nobody is above anybody else. And we seem to have lost that in the halls of our government. I think that sharing this commonality of looking the same, everyone working towards the same mission, is definitely an idea that we could take into government. Our bureaucrats could take a lesson. And I think that it's clear that if we really stopped and thought about it, that we would find that there are people that are probably not a good fit for government office, to be an elected official. I think that we probably could all point out one or two or a handful of people that would probably be better off doing something else. Not that they're particularly bad at their job, but the question is, what is their motive? Why are they here? Why do they want to be elected? Why do they want to serve in public office? You see, the idea always has been, or at least I thought it always has been, that our elected officials are there to serve us, the greater good. They're there to serve the greater good and act on the issues that you and me as constituents put them in office for. And I don't think that happens. It doesn't happen in many places in government at all levels. It's not just the president. It's not just Congress or Senate. But take a look at your school board. Take a look at your city council. Take a look at your state legislature. Take a look everywhere. And really ask yourself, do the people that we put in office have the best interest of their constituency, the United States of America, or their city, or their town, or their school district, or their county? Do they have those constituents in mind? Are they in good faith operating to do what we have put them in office for? And I think the answer to that is no. I think that that's been lost on our politicians, on the bureaucrats that sit up in the ivory towers. And so what if many of those, if not almost all of them, were replaced by men and women who know what sacrifice is? They know what the cost of freedom is because they've paid it. They've paid it with their blood, their sweat, their tears. They've paid it with their mental health. They've paid it with their physical health. And some people will talk about how veterans have been lied to. Military members have been lied to. They can call us whatever it is they want to call us, but at the end of the day, unless you've put your hand on that Bible, unless you've raised your other one and swore allegiance to this country and to defend it against all enemies, foreign and domestic, as we often talk about, maybe, just maybe, you shouldn't be in a position to send others to do those things. And if you can't get on board with that, maybe government office, public office, political appointments are not for you. Because isn't that kind of the whole idea that this country was founded on? Our government structure is for everybody. These are the men and women who we put into office to ensure that the things that we want from our government, the places that we live, are safe, secure. Our borders are closed. We can afford to live comfortably within our means, of course, whatever that looks like for you individually. All these things. I just don't know that our politicians have a mindset that is indicative of all of us reaping the rewards of whatever the topic of conversation is. What happens if veterans just took over Washington? What would it look like? Who would our president be? Well, I would envision our president being somebody probably like a captain or a major or maybe even a lieutenant colonel in any branch of service, 3, 4, or 5. I think once you get above that, you start dealing with politicians and bureaucrats to push narratives into the military and into our soldiers that aren't necessarily conducive to a positive work environment, if you will. So maybe a president who is somebody who served in the military for a long time, was a leader of many soldiers, many troops with very important missions at hand. Maybe this is the type of person that will be able to put the American people above all. Now, I will say, I believe that Donald Trump's doing a pretty damn good job. I think that he continues to show that he is doing something that he, number one, talked about during his campaign, some of the promises that he made to the American people during his campaign, things like securing the border, things like making life a little bit cheaper for Americans. And maybe some will say, well, it's been really slow going. I don't see a whole lot of change. But I think that it's also one of those things where we have to give it time, right? We have to be patient. We have to ensure that we're doing our part. And I don't know that anybody can expect for this debacle that we watched 4 years before Trump, and even many years before that, many administrations before that. All of these things that have been rolled out and forced on the American people that now are coming out to be not right. I think that we are learning a little more every day, or at least getting closer, if we don't learn every day, closer to learning every day ways that we've been taken advantage of as voters, ways that the people that tell us what to do, how much taxes to pay, all of these things, how we have been bamboozled. Maybe that's a good word. Maybe bamboozled is an excellent word. And it seems that President Trump in his new administration is cutting out all of those things. And as they talk about, he was mandated, right? He was mandated by the American people to close the borders, to make eggs cheaper, to fix the VA, to make cops respected again, to bring down prices, make buying homes affordable for Americans, a whole litany of things, making America healthier again. All these things that he talked about. And the reason why people flocked to the polls last November and voted red. So there is an example of somebody who didn't serve in the military, but clearly, in my opinion, has the best possible outcome for Americans in mind. But of course, there's a lot of people that will say that that's bullshit and won't be able to provide a whole lot of examples that are meaningful, that are true. But they're out there, and these conversations are had. And I think that we see it all the time. I think that we see more of the minority, and the minority is people that claim to hate Donald Trump. Even some people that didn't vote for him are supportive of the things that he's doing. Maybe they just don't like him. And I will say this. I think that there are times where I personally would say, man, maybe we should just let that one go. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it. Maybe there are more important things to put out to the masses. But then you have to stop and think. For all this time, since he first came down the escalator initially to run for president, he's been just attacked brutally. These people have been going after him relentlessly for years. All the impeachments, the Russian collusion, this stupid ass thing with some porn star. I mean, there's a lot of things they've been trying to jam him up on. It doesn't seem that any of it ever sticks. Now, maybe there is some protection in there, right? Maybe there are some forces at work here that are keeping him out of trouble. Maybe Donald Trump should be in a lot of trouble. But I think that nobody can argue with the results that he has put forward thus far. Who would our Secretary of Defense be? I think that Pete Hegseth is a great example of that. A person who has walked the walk, who has had to not only got the t-shirt and brought it home, but has wore it and wore holes in it. Somebody who was actively engaged in combat while leading troops, that knows why it's important to keep the soldier first mentality. When you are a leader of soldiers, that is your mission. Your mission is to ensure that your soldiers are taken care of, They have a warm place to sleep. They got food in their bellies. They got clean water to drink. They have all the equipment and supplies and gear and all those things that they need to perform their duties and do them in a professional manner and with a high degree of excellence. That's your job. And as a Secretary of Defense, somebody who knows what the cost of war is before they sign to start another one, before they sign to send more soldiers into harm's way, somebody that knows what the importance of borders are, somebody that knows that if we don't have strong leadership, that we're in trouble, man. But currently we have people who traditionally have been in these roles who've never put on a uniform. They don't know what it's like to watch your brother die on a battlefield. They don't know what it's like to pick up people, whether they were enemy combatants or your brother, pick up their pieces and put them in a bag, and then stuff that shit deep down inside and continue to fight and deal with it later. We've talked about that on this show many times. Somebody running the Pentagon who knows what all of that looks like, what it feels like, and most importantly, how it affects the men and women that raise their hand to fight these battles. I think that how could we have somebody there that can't put two and two together, that can't make sense of the condition of being a veteran. The veteran condition is certainly something that I think a lot of people have no idea about. And so how do we put people into positions of power over others that are fighting wars and are securing our borders and who are promising to put their life in front of everybody else in this country, even the people that hate them? Maybe that's the person, somebody like that should be in the Pentagon, a war fighter like Pete Hegseth. I think Donald Trump made a good pick there. What about a press secretary? What about a press secretary who probably was an E7, a sergeant first class in the Army, maybe even a first sergeant? Somebody that had to go stand in front of the man and brief them about what's going on, and then go back to the soldiers and give them an operation order and brief them about what's next. What are we going to do? Maybe those types of skills would carry over great into a press secretary role. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're going to get it done. Here's the proposed outcomes. Here is what the president, the congressman, the senator, the secretary do. Here is what they said. This is what we're going to do. Have a good day. The press, as we all know, has shifted into something that isn't about facts. We don't get to know just the facts. In fact, when we tune in to the media, we're given a narrative. We're not given facts about what happened. The news isn't about what's really going on, what happened today. The news is about what happened today, but with a twist, or as some people like to call it, the spin zone. We're going to tell you what was said, and then we're going to put a spin on why it may be that way, why these words were said, why this legislation was brought up, to try to pull you. I'm going to pull you to my side. That's not news. And so having somebody like a first sergeant, maybe even a sergeant major, who was used to going and standing in front of a room full of people, telling them what's up, and then knowing that they may just get kicked in the teeth for the information that they put out, but can handle it. Have some thick skin, take their lumps and move on with the day, because we have things to do. These types of things, they're not just ideas, folks. They're not just fantasies. They're not just talking points. These are reality. These are what people are taught. This is how we are trained in the military to do these things. If you're an individual, you're going to fail. If you're an individual, you may die or get seriously injured. And more than that, more importantly than that, the guy on the left or right of you may die or get seriously injured. And if all of those things happen, we as a team fail. Ideas that have been lost to our government. At least so it seems. I think we all can agree that there's some treachery afoot, maybe. So let's talk about some policy changes maybe that we would see. I think the first one I had outlined here was like a complete overhaul of the VA, which we've talked about on this show many times. We just talked about it last week. And so those types of things are happening. Doug Collins is now the VA secretary, as we know, and he is shaking it up. They are overhauling the VA. People like Doug Collins and Pete Hegseth who have the best interest of veterans and members of the military in mind first. Is Doug Collins looking to get rid of people in the VA system? Yeah, he is. Do these types of things always mean that we have it out for veterans? Do these types of things always mean that it's negative? And so I'm sure what you're going to say is, well, the people that stand to be fired, to lose their jobs, to lose their livelihood, they're going to be negatively affected. I agree, that's true. But what is the idea for the greater good? What is the idea for America as a whole? Veterans are an extremely treasured commodity in this country. They're very important people, VIPs. Well, then why is there so much disdain for making the VA in particular better for them? If we need to save money for programming, if we're going to do things like build basically a base in West LA on the VA grounds for homeless veterans, but we have no money to do that, and the answer isn't to print more. We can't just ask Congress, hey, can you print us some money? Send it on over when the ink's dry, and we'll get on to ending veteran homelessness. Maybe we need to operate within the confines of what we have, because we're already deeply in debt. We already have problems in the organization. So if we cut some of it out and take a new look at what we have and how we can make it better, that doesn't mean that folks can't be invited back to work, maybe a different job, maybe some different duties, a different job title, maybe. But we can't improve until we know where our shortcomings are. And so when you see the mainstream media talking about things like VA layoffs, for example, they're going to tell you that Doug Collins and President Trump are just looking to fire 83,000 people. Well, but that's not the truth. The truth is that Doug Collins is looking to get rid of people, yes, that aren't pulling their weight, positions that probably aren't extremely necessary, doing things like finding doctors who will see patients instead of not seeing patients. And for whatever reason that happened, I guess I'm not quite sure, but it's an interesting point that nobody has really ever asked more questions about. Doug Collins will talk about how he needs doctors that will see patients, but no further information about why are doctors at the VA not seeing patients? Why are they not involved in direct care? And if the answer is, well, they consult and they read imaging and they do that. Okay, well, in my opinion, if I'm a doctor that reads imaging and I consult other medical professionals about what's going on in this MRI or these x-rays, well, in my mind, that's direct care. And so Doug Collins said, we're not affecting direct care of veterans. We're not firing doctors. We're not getting rid of that. Okay. So we beat that one. We beat that one, the VA overhaul. We talked about that. Ending veteran homelessness. President Trump just last week signed an executive order to slash 6,000 homeless veterans off the list. By January 1st of 28, there should be, if they do what he's asked them to do, a place for 6,000 homeless veterans to live. Now, that's not going to end veteran homelessness. There's currently about 32,000 homeless veterans in this country, but 6,000 is a nice chunk. And if this works out, there's no reason why we can't do it again. There's no reason why we can't have one on the East Coast. There's no reason why we can't have one south. There's no reason why we can't have one in the north somewhere. What if in 10 years we cut 20,000 veterans out of the homelessness category? Because I think we're always going to have people. There's always going to be vets that for whatever reason want to be I think we're just going to have people in general in this country that just want to be homeless. That's an easier lifestyle. They don't want to work. They don't want to be responsible for bills, whatever. If that's a choice you make, that's the choice you make. But I think for the veteran population, just not having an option is a problem. Because these are the men and women that in this country we cherish. I think that some other policies that would really take, that people would support, is some greater focus on veteran mental health, or just mental health in this country in general. If you are a person that thinks there is not a mental health epidemic going on in this country, I would urge you to get out more. There are people on both sides of any argument that are way too out of hand, in my opinion. Just, it's gotten so crazy. I don't get it. And so part of a way to fix this stuff as it relates to the veteran community, the veteran population in this country, is bridging this gap, bridging the gap between civilians and military/veteran people. In my opinion, it's one of the biggest hurdles as a community of warriors that we have to get over. We have to find a way to bridge this gap. Civilians often lack understanding of military service. Civilians often lack knowledge of military service. They don't quite understand military service. They don't understand sacrifice, not like the veteran community does. And more importantly, not like our families understand it. If we haven't talked about it before, I'll tell you that it's a thing that I have been talking about in my circle for a long time, bridging this gap. And one of the key things is that our families, our friends, people that are the most close to us, they understand what this sacrifice means also. And sometimes it's more of a sacrifice, in my opinion, for our families. When we're gone, when soldiers are gone and deployed and doing their job in a forward area, or just, maybe, if a Navy guy, they get on their ship and they go out for 9 months and they do their tour and they sail wherever they're going, and before they come back, and it could be 9 months, it could be a year, maybe it could be 6 months. I guess I don't really know how long they are. I didn't serve in the Navy, but you can't always call home. And if you do, you're usually not able to talk about what you're doing, where you're going, where you're at currently. And so you leave your family and your friends, the people that are most close to you, you leave them wondering. Leave them wondering where you're at, what you're doing, if you're okay. How's the food? Is it warm there? Is it hot there? Are you getting along with your buddies? Is your leadership treating you right? All of these things are all talked about amongst families and their soldiers when they communicate home. And it's this constant state of wondering where your person or people are. Veterans can serve as a bridge, explaining complex issues with clarity and humanity. I think that this plays into the last one, right? Just being able to help people understand military service. But there are some very complex issues that you have to work through during your service, especially if you go forward. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of people that you really can't communicate with well. And assuming that you're communicating with local nationals who are on your side, being able to tell whether or not they're really on your side is a pretty profound skill that I think military people have, which I think would come in handy in Washington. Being a judge of character, or just getting that feeling when you know something ain't right, you know somebody's lying to you, or they're not just telling you the whole truth. And I think that over time, now that we've started to hear about President Biden's cancer diagnosis all of a sudden, and now it brings into question all of these other things about the last year or two of his presidency, or maybe even the whole president, all 4 years, whether he was with it enough, whether he was all there, who's using the auto pen, and all these things. I think that many veterans have a pretty profound ability to know when that bullshit meter should be pegged out. And then calling out the bullshit. I don't know that that's something that civilians really can wrap their mind around as much as people who had to live it. Maybe law enforcement officers are really good at this also. Being able to tell when you're being lied to is probably a pretty strong skill of a police officer. Any police officer, anyway, that's worth their salt on the street. Just the way that we move through our day, maybe the way that we see the world, maybe the way that we see traffic, stupid people in line at the gas station or the grocery store. And then also being able to remain calm for the most part, at least display calmness and having a conversation and sifting through all the BS to find out what the real issue is. Maybe that's something that would change for the better. But also just understanding tradition, military tradition. For example, let me ask you this. Do you know the difference between Memorial Day and Veterans Day? Every year, I find myself having to explain what the difference is to people. I don't think that this is something where people are intending to be disrespectful. I think it's just plain and simple, innocent ignorance for many people. For a lot of people, things like Memorial Day is a day to buy a mattress. It's a day off of work. It's a day to go get together with friends for a picnic, things like that. But people lose sight of Memorial Day and the idea that it's a day for us to reflect on the members of the military that are no longer with us. The ones that paid the ultimate sacrifice in combat for this country, the ones that gave everything, including their youth, their mental health, their physical health, everything, sacrificed it all for this country. Maybe they completed their service and they're gone now, but these are the reasons for Memorial Day. Veterans Day, same thing, except we celebrate veterans who are alive, who have not passed on yet, who are still doing good things in the community, like, plainly enough, like running for office, like continuing to serve their community. The oath that we take doesn't end when your uniform comes off. It doesn't always work that way. So I think that these are things that we can help prop veterans up, help prop them up and get them motivated to run for an office, get them motivated to start a podcast and talk about their experiences and why they feel the way they feel, why they see the world the way they see it, and have meaningful conversations with people of the same culture, have it with civilians, whoever will have the conversation and whoever will be engaged. Let's talk about some obstacles, why veterans haven't already filled more leadership positions. Why is that? Why would putting veterans in elected offices or positions of leadership in our communities, why might that be difficult? Well, I think that for a lot of veterans, they avoid the spotlight. They avoid having to put up with bureaucratic red tape. I swore an allegiance. I took an oath. And I think that that's something that should be recognized. But for that time, I was told where to go, what to wear, when it's time to eat, when the day's over, sometimes when I can go to the bathroom, when I can come and go, how I have to wear my hair, how I have to wear my facial hair, all of these things. And of course, we volunteered for it. But after what some would say is a lifetime, a short lifetime of doing all those things, sometimes you just feel like, I don't care. I don't care what it is they tell me I should be doing. I don't care what it is they tell me I should be wearing or how I should wear this and how. I don't care. I did that. I'm going to do what I want. And I get it. I understand. And I don't disagree. But running for office requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of time. And it requires a lot of navigating bureaucratic red tape. And I don't believe that those are things that military people, for the most part, are very good at being patient with. Having to do it and go through the motions is something that military folks are definitely okay with. But volunteering to do it all over again, I think, is the hurdle. I think that's the sticking point, where we don't get as many military people wanting to run for office. I think that we also have an issue with veterans who underestimate themselves. They underestimate how good they can be for their community. They underestimate what they learned in the military and how those skills transfer to the civilian world, especially civilian leadership. And I think that some people who underestimate but still may, get their toe wet and dabble in it a little bit, I think that those folks find that it can be a seamless transition. Sometimes it hits me out of the blue. Just different things that I learned in the military, different skills, different ideas that I don't necessarily think transfer well to the civilian world and how I communicate or interact with civilian people who might not quite understand me. Sometimes I'm surprised about how these things come out and how they're presented. And then more importantly, how people respond to them, which I think is a pretty interesting deal. I think that we need to be more deliberate about changing mindsets of veterans who may be great politicians. They may be great leaders, political leaders in this country. If you stop and think about it, if you led soldiers in combat, if you led men and women through times in their lives when maybe all hope was lost or could have been lost, morale was low, maybe your soldiers were tired, they were beat up, they didn't want to do it today. But your job as a leader is to motivate them. It's to motivate your soldiers to get their butts up and perform, because that's what we're here to do, to accomplish the mission. I think that most people would find that those leadership skills, they come pretty natural. All you have to do is allow yourself to be in the position, in the situation. And then like they told us when we were in some military school, whatever it was, muscle memory will just take over. When you need it, trust in your training. Trust yourself. You'll do the right thing. And at very least, you're going to make a decision. One of the biggest failures in leadership, in my opinion, is the inability to just make a decision when one needs to be made. Maybe it's not always the right decision. Maybe it could be a little better. But there are leaders in this country, in our communities, that are froze. They're frozen and unable to make decisions when they need to be made because they're scared that they might be the wrong decision. They're going to be criticized. Maybe they'll be fired. Maybe this, maybe that. The inability to just make a decision and then see it through, good, bad, or indifferent, is, in my opinion, a very positive skill for somebody in a leadership role, especially in an elected official in our country. That is something that I believe is extremely important. Just imagine what this movement could look like. Now, maybe not every elected official needs to be a military veteran. Maybe not every person needs to be a person who wore a uniform. In fact, I'm going to say that I don't think that every person needs to. I think that would leave out methods. It would leave out ideas. It would leave out having further conversation about very important issues in this country and how we lead and how things go forward and how we as a country react to the things around us. But make no mistake about it, veterans in elected roles in public offices in all levels of government in this country, I think would be a very, very positive thing. I mean, it'd be something new, right? It would be something new that we haven't seen before. I mean, of course, we see veterans in politics, but I don't think that there's enough of them to make this cultural shift that might need to be happening in our country. I think Donald Trump is starting it, or at least making it look like an attractive idea, this whole cultural shift. And I think that as Americans, we are thirsty and hungry for the truth. We're thirsty and hungry for change. This whole hope and change thing that Obama ran on years ago, the only positive thing about that is the actual words. I think now we have more hope. I think now we are seeing change. And I think that the people that are staunchly against it are the ones that have a whole lot more to lose than they have to gain. But they don't seem to understand that when we as a country as a whole are gaining a better life, more money in our pockets, some freedom from the rest of the world as it relates to trade and money and finances and security and all these things, once we can maybe put a gap between us and everyone else, maybe life would just get a little bit easier for us, for Americans. It's not something we've tried in recent history, and things have seemed to progressively get worse and worse and worse. The numbers say that the 4 years of Donald Trump 2 administrations ago was a good reprieve from the bullshit. Things were better. People had more money. Americans were happier. We were more respected around the world in many different circles. But other than that, there isn't a whole lot of positivity coming out of previous administrations. And I don't know that any side of the aisle is worse than the other, except for the last administration. I don't know that George Bush was great for America. I don't know that Obama was great for America. We know that Joe Biden wasn't great for America. So why don't we talk about doing something new? This idea that we stop talking about what if we would have done something different? What if someone else was voted into office? What if we didn't end this war? What if we didn't get involved in that war? What if? Well, maybe the stance we as Americans need to take and push into our politicians, into our elected officials is what's next? What are we going to do next? What are you going to do next? What are you going to do for us? I mean, hell, traipse around our communities for months and weeks and days on end, asking us for our vote. You get on podiums and stages and talk about how you're going to make things better for your constituency. But I don't know that there's overwhelming amounts of people that are going to social media or going to any other outlet talking about how great you did at bringing the promises you made to fruition with the time you were given. When you begged us for our vote, when you begged us for money for your campaign, all of those things. I think that this whole topic came to me because I was driving in my truck and I was just thinking about how long has it been since we can say that we have voted in politicians that really have our best interest in mind. And I don't know that anybody has a whole list of people or previous administrations or previous initiatives or whatever it is that did exactly what they said they were going to do. Now, is it possible? Is it possible for any elected official to do everything they say they're going to do? Maybe it's not. And maybe that's an unrealistic expectation for us to have. But how about majority of it? How about majority of the things that you say you're going to do? At least give them a shot. And then be transparent about it. Because I think that another thing is that there are a lot of things that probably get started, they get talked about, conversations get had, maybe some legislation gets drafted, but it doesn't always make it out to the constituency. So maybe something like having more transparency is something that we need, that we should be asking for. And I think that veterans are great at that because we're pretty good at standing in front of the man or the panel or the people and get roasted if we failed. And we should. Our politicians should be roasted by their constituency every time they fail us. And who is the person setting the markers for failure or success? Well, I guess that's a whole nother conversation. I would say it's the constituency that voted you into office, and we learn that your actions have been approved or not by the next election. But that's where we fall short, right? Because how true are elections anymore? I don't know. I'll leave that up for you to decide. And I mean, I guess we can round all this out by just putting out a call to action, right? What if we had just, let's say we have midterm elections coming up. Let's say across this country, we had 200 veterans running for office, maybe even just 100. And let's say 60% of them, let's say 60 of them get in. And those veterans start mentoring other veterans to get into office. And the next time we have 30 more veterans. And then those guys continue to mentor other veterans who might be good for office. And before you know it, after an X number of years, we have an overwhelming majority of our politicians, our city council members, our school board members, our mayors, our local, state, county, federal offices are majority filled with veterans. The men and women who have understood this whole time what sacrifice is really about, what it means to put the needs of a whole country in front of your own for the greater good. I mean, that's what they teach us. That's what they teach you in the military when you join up. These are the things that are taught to you. You will work as a team. You will leave nobody behind. And we're going to do it with a high degree of excellence. What's wrong with that? And why is that not a narrative that we as American people have been pushing? Why is that not a thing? I don't know. But maybe it should be. Maybe this is the call to action. Maybe this is the one video that gets people thinking about running for office and mentoring other veterans to run for office. And maybe running for office isn't your thing, but maybe start a nonprofit, start a podcast, start a business, and just be involved. Be involved in your community and provide positive change through your experience in the military. Military service isn't all about guns and killing and being fucked up from your time in the service. It's not all about that. Does that happen? Yeah, that happens. But we have an overabundance of men and women who have many skills to be strong leaders, to be strong contributors. And just what if? Maybe it should be a focus, maybe not. But I guess the whole point of today's conversation was just to talk about what if. What if we had more veterans running this country? Do you think it would work? Do you think we would fall short? Do you think veterans are capable? What do you think? Leave us some comments about what you think. Maybe I'm completely off base. Maybe I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But I do think that we are in a place in this country where we need to have these conversations. We need to talk about this stuff because other than Donald Trump and what he's doing right now, we don't have a strong foundation or idea about what's next. I mean, keep in mind, the man can't run again. And so if he's doing all of these great things and he has all these great, fantastic people in place, what happens when he's done? Who fills his shoes? Some would say J.D. Vance is next in line. Well, he's a veteran. He seems to be strong. Maybe he would be a good president. And to be completely honest and transparent, I don't really know enough about him to make a good assertion about whether or not he should be or would be a good president. But I think this is important just to start these conversations. Talk about it. What do you think? Is this something that America should push for? Maybe not. The fight for this country didn't end in a uniform. It continues at home. Just because our service ended in uniform doesn't mean our service to our communities end. And there's a lot of veterans out there, I think, that would be very, very good, be excellent leaders in the community. So if you are a veteran, consider it. Think about it. And if it's not you, maybe you have a battle buddy that would be good. Maybe talk to them about it. But if nothing else, have the conversation. Because you never know, there might be somebody coming in the next month or the next year or two that is a veteran, that would be willing to run for office, that would be good. It'd be a good example of how to lead the greater good, lead the American people with ideas that this country's military was founded on. I mean, there's so many positives to it in my mind. But again, maybe I could be wrong. But it's definitely something that's worthy of a discussion. So let us know what you think, folks. Leave a comment down below, like and share and subscribe. Any and all of our content that you find enjoyable, if you think it's helpful. We are trying to grow this platform and grow our footprint to make a difference in the lives of veterans, and in doing that, better our community as a whole. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next time. Good night.